Good morning, everyone. Welcome those here and those online. Few announcements. Justin's a little under the weather today, so he won't be here. So I'll give you the announcements. Probably the first announcement is it's only 1 week until our all-church barbecue. That's next week at John and Carrie's house, and the address is in your bulletin. Again, we have a sign-up for sides and desserts, drinks. The church is going to provide the meat, and so we want everyone to go ahead and sign up, and please come. The other thing we have is the Aces baseball game. We're set for that for the 25th of July. We have 50 tickets reserved right now. We can get more if we need them. Starting next week, Paula is going to be taking the money for it, $24 for a ticket, and she'll get into more information on that in next week as what all you're going to get. There'll be a pre-show, you get a hat, seating area, fireworks afterwards, and it'll be a fun time. To give you a chance to invite your friends over and do something and show them that church is not just a stuffy thing that we do in some strange building off in nowhere. We also have fun. Church should be fun. The last thing I want to mention right now is Zella is up and running. That's our giving app. It allows you to give directly to the church, and the information's in your bulletin. I'm not going to go ahead and go over how to do it. If you have any questions, see one of us, and we'll be happy to help you. But it's good to see everyone here this morning, this Memorial Day. It's hard to believe that it's already Memorial Day. Year goes by too fast. And it's time that we get a chance to remember those that gave so much for us. They're the reason that we have what we have. They gave their all so we could have it all. And we need to remember those that we've lost this weekend. And so we're going to start with a couple songs as usual, and then I'll come back up here and we'll get going. Worked. Always love technology when it works. When it doesn't work, that's when you get to fun. Has there ever been a time in your life when you've had something so big and scary, you just couldn't do anything about it? You just sat there and froze? You know you should be doing something. You know you should be reacting. But you just can't. You just stand there. And it can be something simple sometimes, like you're in a crowd of people and they're doing something wrong. You know it's wrong, and you just don't say anything. You just stand there and you watch it. Or somebody's being abused and you know, I should really go stand up and help that person. I should say something. I should do something. How many times did you do it? How many times didn't you do it? Or standing up to your boss. Now there's a real scary one. How many of you have ever told your boss you're wrong? I had a CEO one time. It was the ultimate diplomat. He explained to me one time that diplomacy was the art of stomping all over somebody's shoes without ever disturbing the shine on them. And he used to tell our boss, he says, I never went up to and told John, who worked at Nugget, John Squaga, that he was wrong. Because if I went up to him and told him immediately that, John, you're wrong, he might come back to me and he says, yeah, I'm wrong, but I'm the boss, so we're going to do it this way. Instead, what he'd do is he'd go, well, I don't agree, but you're the boss, so we'll do it. And then he'd leave. And he said he'd wait, and a short time later, John would come and say, well, why don't you agree? And then he was willing to listen. And he could explain it to him. So I learned some lessons there. Not as well as I should have, but. So, and sometimes it's a physical danger. You know, it's not just you could be fired for standing up, telling your boss he's wrong. But it could be a physical danger where your life is actually in danger. How are you going to react? Too many times in my life, I have to admit, I didn't do what I should have just for the wrong reasons. More times than I really care to remember. Sometimes it was just easier to let things go rather than stir the pot. I didn't want to be the one that stood out. Aha, he's a troublemaker. He's the one. He's the trouble. It's just easier to let things go on. I did not have enough faith and courage to do what I should have been doing. I did not react the way I should have. So what does God say about fear? In Deuteronomy 31:6 it says, be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Or we continue in Isaiah. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you in my righteous hand. God's got it in his palm of his hand. He's not going to let us fall out. And probably the one famous psalm that almost everybody knows, and I'm only going to start it. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and thy staff, they comfort me. I'm not going to continue with the rest of it. We're familiar with that. So, God says, don't let your fear overcome you. Why not? I am with you, always. We are never alone. When things are going bad, you're in trouble. You're facing danger. You're facing circumstances. It's hard to sit back and say, God's with me. I don't have to worry about this. I wish I could say that I was one who all the time said, I'm not going to worry about it. God's going to take care of it. I mean, there are times I have when things are out of my control. But too many times, especially if I think I ought to be in control of them, I don't wait for God. I don't depend on God. I fear if I don't act and do something right now, or if I do something terrible is going to happen. I don't trust God the way I should. So, last week, Justin began our study of King David. And as we looked at it last week, we saw that we looked at the selection of David as a new king by Samuel the prophet. Saul had been elected as the first king of Israel. Why had he been elected as a king of Israel? Because the people wanted a king. Why did they want a king? When they had God leading them? God is the ultimate king over them? No, they wanted a physical human king. Why? Well, number one, they didn't trust God because they couldn't see him. And they had to go through the priest. But number two, and more importantly, we want to be like everybody else. Gee, does that sound familiar to people? How many times have you heard your kids come up and say, but everybody else is doing that? But they can do that. Why can't I do that? They dress that way. Why can't I dress that way? Their parents allow them to do it. Why are you being so mean and not allow me to do it? That ring a bell with anybody? I can remember getting in my daughter one time and she's looking at me and telling me, Daddy, you just don't understand. And I ruined her day because I told her, I understand. I just completely, totally disagree with you. And I'm the authority. I don't think she spoke to me for 3 days after that. She was so mad. So Justin last week began to look at the selection of Samuel as king. Now, why did he select David? David was not an important person. He was the youngest person in the family. It was not a prominent family. He had not done anything that was outstanding in his life. He was this young kid that hadn't done anything yet. And he'd been given the lowly task of watching the sheep. Now, this was a task that usually was reserved for the youngest or the weakest. The kids would watch the sheep. People doing it were not held in very high regard. I mean, if you told somebody's a shepherd, you don't really think of them in the same way if you told somebody that he's a doctor. We just don't hold people in that regard. So David was in a position where he was not held very highly in regard. But when God led Samuel, God selected David as the new king. Samuel anointed him and selected him because that's what God told him to do. Remember, Saul had been chosen by the people. Saul was everything a human could want in a king. He was tall, strong, powerful. He was authoritative. He'd won a couple battles, and he was just physically everything you thought of when you wanted a king. David, he was a shrimpy little kid that probably, at this time, was probably around 20. Not somebody that you would normally have selected as king. But the difference is Saul was selected by people. David was selected by God himself. So God told Samuel, don't look at the outside. Look at what's on the inside. That's what's important. Not what's out here, what's in here. What do you think? So this week we're going to look at the first part of a very famous time in David's life. Probably this is one of the things that most people know David for. David had gone to be with Saul after his selection to be his shield bearer. And he also played the lyre for Saul. Now, Saul had been selected after the Spirit of God had been removed from him. An evil spirit would come in periodically and bedevil him. And Saul had been told, and it was true, that if soothing music was played around him, that this evil spirit would leave and Saul would be comforted. Now, David, one of the things he was known as, besides being the shepherd, this beautiful boy, was he played the lyre. He's known for making music, good music. So that became part of his duties. He was shield bearer. He played the lyre and music to soothe Saul when he was troubled. And he also went back home, take care of the sheep and feed the sheep for his father. So he's a busy young boy going back and forth. So as we look at this, we see that we're going to look at 1 Samuel 17. And as we read it, it says, "Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered at Socoh, which belonged to Judah, and they camped between Socoh and Azekah in the Ephes-dammim. Saul and the men of Israel were assembled and camped in the valley of Elah, and they drew up in battle formation to confront the Philistines. The Philistines were standing on the mountain on one side, and Israel was standing on the mountain's other side with the valley between them." So the Israelites are again being confronted by their enemies, the Philistines. And the Israelites are again going to go into battle with them. Now, the three oldest of the sons of Jesse, now Jesse had 8 sons total. So the 3 oldest boys, Elah and Eliah, and 2 of his brothers, had gone with Saul to fight the battle. And Saul and his army faced off with the Philistine and his army. They were facing off on 2 sides of the mountain with a valley between them. And this had been going on for 40 days. So the armies had been gathered on the 2 sides of the mountains. They would face each other. And this had been going on for 40 days that they would do it. Now, 40 in the Bible is quite often used as a time of preparation or judgment. We can see this in Genesis and the flood. And it says in Genesis 7:12, "And the rain fell upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And the water swelled up from the ground at the same time." So the ark had been built. God had called all the animals into the ark. Noah and his family entered the ark. God sealed the ark, and then the rain began. Waters came up, the rain fell. The rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. And then they were on the ark for 9 months to a year, depending on what you read, because it took that long for all the water to recede so they could have dry land again. But 40 days was the time that the rain fell upon the earth. And in Exodus, we see when God calls Moses up onto the mountain to get the tablets, the law, and the commandments. And we see this in Exodus 24:12. "And the Lord said to Moses, 'Come on up to me on the mountain and wait there, that I might give you the tablets of stone with the laws and the commandments which I've written for their instruction.' So Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain. And Moses was on the mountain how long? 40 days and 40 nights. Now this is when he first got the tablets the first time. When he came down, he threw the tablets down and broke them. Had to go get the second set of tablets. And this continues even up into the New Testament. You know, we can see in the temptation of Jesus as we read in Matthew. In Matthew 4:1-2, it says, "Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting, how long? 40 days and 40 nights. He was hungry." Well, I don't know about you, but if I'd been fasting for 4 days and 4 nights, I'd be pretty hungry, let alone 40 days and 40 nights. Although people have said that if you don't fast for at least 60 days, it's not worth mentioning. The human body can easily do that thing. That's something that obviously I'm not challenging in any way. I like to eat, I'll have to admit it. So Jesus was hungry and he was tempted by the devil 3 times. So 40 is an important number in the Bible. It's time of preparation. It's time of testing. So the 2 armies are facing each other, and there's a preparation going on. There's a testing of the army going on. And as we continue reading in 1 Samuel, we continue in verses 4 and 5 in chapter 17. Then a champion came forth from the army encampment of the Philistines, named Goliath, from Gath. And his height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had a bronze helmet on his head, and he wore scale armor which weighed 5,000 shekels of bronze. He also had bronze greaves on his legs, and a bronze saber hung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and the head of his spear weighed 600 shekels of iron, and his shield carrier walked in front of him. So each day, a champion, a giant from Gath named Goliath, would come out and challenge the Israelites to send a champion of their own out to fight him. And it was the winner taking all. Now the armies of Saul did not respond because they're afraid of Goliath. He was a giant. So let's take a look at him. There he is, compared to the normal man. It says his height was 6 cubits and a span. Cubit is 18 inches, approximately. A span was half a cubit, or 9 inches. So he was approximately, according to this, 9 feet, 9 inches tall. Now, most of our scriptures list him as this 6 cubits in span. Some scriptures and some Dead Sea Scrolls list him as 4 cubits in span. 4 cubits in span would be about 6 feet, 9 inches. Now, I personally believe that he was the 6 cubits in span, simply because of the size of the armor and the spear. They would be more likely to be carried by a giant compared to a man of 6 foot 9 inches tall. In either case, he was a giant compared to the average height at the time, which is about 5 feet 5 inches or shorter. So he's big. And I said he had this army that weighed 5,000 shekels. What 5,000 shekels of bronze? Well, depending on how it's translated, and there's different translations exactly how much it was, it's somewhere between 125 to 156 pounds of armor. This was just the armor he was wearing. It wasn't the armor covering his legs or his helmet. This is a big, heavy weight. His spear head was 1,000 shekels of iron, or about 16 pounds. That was the spearhead alone, let alone the rest of the spear. So this is why I think it was the bigger guy. This is a lot of weight to be carrying around. Much easier for a giant to be doing it than a guy that's a little smaller. So the people never says this, but some people have speculated that he was one of the Nephilim. This is pure speculation on their part. There's nothing in the Bible that would back it up. But obviously he was somebody that other people would be easily afraid of. I would definitely have not wanted to face him in any form, shape, or way, in any time. Facing somebody 9'9", I'm running the other way. I'm sorry. Now, where have we seen before in the Bible that people were afraid because of giants in the land? Well, let's go back to the people as they're exiting and getting ready to end to the promised land. So let's go back and look at Numbers. In Numbers 13, 32 through 33, it says, Then the men who had up with him said, We are not able to go up against these people, for they are stronger than we are. So they brought a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, The land through which we have gone to spy out is land that devours its inhabitants and all the people of a great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak who came from Nephilim. And we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. So as they were approaching the promised land and getting ready to cross over and conquer it, 12 spies had been set out to scout the land before the people crossed over and began the conquest of the promised land. Now the spies had come back, and 10 of the spies said, The people could not win because of the giants in the land. He said, We can't possibly fight and beat these guys. They're giants. They're going to devour us. We're just like grasshoppers compared to them. Only the two of the spies disagreed. They said, Yes, there are giants. But with God's blessing and help, we can win. We will win. But because the people did not have faith in God and were afraid, the decision was made to listen to the 10 spies and not the 2 spies. And so what happened? They did not go into the promised land at that time. The people did not have enough faith in God and were afraid. So they didn't go into the promised land. And God's reaction? Well, because of this, God said, None of that generation, except for the 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, the 2 who had urged them to go into the land, and had said that with God's help, we can win, we can beat them. Nobody else of that generation but those 2 were allowed to go into the promised land. So the people wandered in the desert for how long? 40 years. How long would it have taken them to cross the desert if they'd gone in when they should have after the Exodus? About 40 days. So because the people were afraid, because they listened and didn't have enough faith in God to do what they should have, they didn't enter the promised land. And instead of wandering in the desert for 40 days and going into the promised land, they wandered in the desert for 40 years until that generation died off. So now we see this is happening again. The Israeli army did not have enough faith to fight the giant, and so just stood there doing nothing. They did not have enough faith in God to act, to believe they could win, to fight it. So as we continue in 1 Samuel, let's jump down to verse 17. Then Jesse, who was David's father, said to his son David, Take your brothers an ephah of roasted grain and these 10 loaves and run to the camp to your brothers. Bring also 10 slices of cheese to the commander of the thousands, and look into the well-being of your brothers and bring back confirmation from them. Remember, David's 3 oldest brothers, Eliab and the other 2 oldest brothers, had gone to fight with Saul. So they were in this army that was facing the Philistines. And David's father, Jesse, wanted to find out what was going on with his sons. So he called David himself, and he commanded David to take some supplies to his brothers and their commander. He did this so that he could check on them and see how they were doing, and then have David come back and tell him how they were, because his father was worried about them. So David left the sheep in the hands of a keeper and took the supplies to the front where his brothers were. He got there in the morning, just as the usual routine was happening. So the usual routine was the two armies, the Israelites on one side, the Philistines on the other. The two armies would form up, get into battle formation, face each other, start yelling taunts and insults at each other, stand there yelling and insulting each other. And then what would happen? As they stood there, Goliath would walk forward. Goliath would stand out in front and say, "Hey, I'm here. Fight me. Some of you come out here and fight me for it." What happened with the Israelites? He didn't respond to it. Nobody was willing to come out and fight Goliath. Well, how many of you would be willing to go out and fight a 9 foot 9 inch giant? Yeah. They were afraid. So the two armies would stand there facing each other, shouting insults after a while. And finally, they would slowly stand down and then go back to their camps. So it had been going on like this for about 40 days. They'd get up in the morning, they'd form up battle lines, they'd shout insults and taunt each other, face off each other across the way. And then Goliath would come out and challenge them. And they wouldn't respond. And finally, things kind of wound down again. They kind of break up, go back to camp, and wait till the next morning. And the next morning would come, and they would form up again in the battle lines, shout insults at each other. Goliath would step out and challenge them. And they would just stand there, and slowly they would break up, go back to camp, and this went on and on for 40 days. Now, when David got there, he saw the armies forming up, and he left the baggage and ran to his brothers. Now, you have to remember, in those days, battles were not quite like they are today. The armies would form up, face each other, usually, and come into battle in a specific area. There were followers and people would come and watch the battles. We even saw this in the Civil War in the United States when the two armies fought. There were people who come out in their chariots and stuff and line up so they could watch the battle. They could watch the fight. This was really a continuation of the gladiator theme where the two men would battle in the Colosseum, only now it's two armies battling. And people would, and followers would come out and watch it. So it wasn't unusual to have hangers on around the camp watching the armies. So when David got there, it really wasn't unusual to have somebody come out there, bring stuff, and stand around, see what the armies were doing. So David has come out, and when he got there, he left his baggage with the baggage keeper, and he ran to the front lines and found his brothers, and he greeted his brothers. "Hey, the other brothers, how you guys doing? You doing okay? You still, have we had any big battles yet?" And while he's talking to his brothers, what happens? Well, what happened every morning? Goliath comes out. And he came out from the army of the Philistines, and he spoke the same words. And what did he say? Well, what were his words? "I am from, and I am a Philistine. You're all in armor. You're all set to battle me. Don't you have anyone who's willing to come out and fight me? If he's able to fight me and kill me, then it's all over for us and we become your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you all become my servants. So, and serve us." Then the Philistine said, I've defiled the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man so we might fight together. Come on, anyone. Come on, fight me. Isn't there a man among you who's willing to come out and fight? Now, this was something that was not unusual in that day and age. Rather than having the two armies conflict all the time, they would select a champion, and the two champions would fight. Whoever won with the two champions would decide the battle, rather than everybody fighting. So this was not unusual. So Goliath is doing something that is very much common at the time. And let's face it, Goliath probably had never been defeated in his life. When you're 9 feet 9, how many times are you going to lose a battle? Not often. So he's come out and challenged him. And what did the Israelites do? They kind of just fled away. And they said, have you seen this giant? It's probably them talking to me. Who can fight him? I mean, he's come to defy the Israelites and torment them. Yeah, true. The king has promised great things if we can fight him. The king said, I'll greatly reward any man who can fight him and feed him and can stand against this giant. I'll give him great riches, wealth beyond his imagination. I'll give him my own daughter. So he's willing to give him a king's daughter. And he would exempt them in Israel. In other words, they would be free from any taxes for the rest of their life in Israel. Now, how many of you would like to be free of taxes for the rest of your life? If anyone says they want, you need to repent for lying. We all would, right? And this was a great amount of money for them. So there's a great reward, but it's a great challenge. It's a very big challenge. All you got to do is get this great reward, get these riches, king's daughter, be exempt, your family being exempt from taxes. You just have to go out and beat this 9'9" giant. Simple. No problem. Wrong. David, when he heard this, he was quite offended. And he asked those near him, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he would challenge the army of the Lord of God? Why did he call him an uncircumcised Philistine? What was the meaning of circumcision? What was the symbolism of the Israelites being circumcised? It was an outward showing of their selection and being set aside as God's people. So he's really saying, who is this Gentile, this person not selected by God, not one of God's people, that's willing to come out and challenge the army of the Lord God? He's just somebody God hasn't selected. Why are we so afraid of him? So David was alarmed, and he really couldn't understand why no one had faith in God to fight this challenge here and be able, with God's help, to defeat him. Why does no one have faith that God can help you win the battle? What it comes down to. By not accepting the battle, they're saying, I don't think God can help me win. When we don't accept the battle, we're saying, I don't have enough faith in God. And as I said before, we saw it in Numbers already. This is the same question that Joshua and Caleb had when they came back with their report. And they had, were part of the spies that had gone out to scout the promised land, seen the giants. The other 10 spies says, don't go into it, the giants, we can't beat them. And Caleb and Joshua said, yeah, the giants, but with God's help, we can beat them, we can defeat them. Let's go. Didn't happen. So when they got back with the report, people were going to decide whether or not to go into the promised land and fight for it. If not, if they decide not to go in, they would wait and do it later. Well, in Numbers, what happened? They decided not to go into the land, and what happened because they decided not to go in the land then? They wandered in the desert for 40 years. Yeah. So what's the reaction of his brothers? Now, when Eliab, his oldest brother, heard him when he spoke to the men, Eliab's anger burned against David, and he said, why is it that you have come down? And with whom have you left these few sheep in the wilderness? I myself know your insolence and the wickedness of your heart. For you've come down in order to see the battle. So you're just trying to not do your duty, do what you're worth. You just come down to see what's going on, see the entertainment. So, he's looking at David and saying, why you come here? I don't know, you've only come because you're a wicked boy. Left the sheep in the wilderness and has come to see the battle. It's the only reason you've come. So why was Eliab so mad? Well, there's several reasons that are possible. First is, it's his baby brother. Pecking order of things, the oldest brother does not always respect the youngest brother. I'm a twin. I'm 10 minutes older than my brother. Not very much, right? But if my brother and I fight, and I have to be ashamed to admit this, if I wanted to get his goat, what did I have to do? I'd call him my younger brother. I call him my little brother. 10 minutes littler, 10 minutes younger. But it was enough. He was the younger one. I could get his goat. I'm sorry to say. So this is his baby brother. If you will, the runt of the litter. Younger brothers are famous for getting in trouble in their older brother's eyes. Why? Because they're still young, still immature compared to the older brother. They're still stupid and could not be trusted. So he's sure that David had snuck off and did not really think that he did it because he was following his father's orders. Secondly, could be because he was jealous of David. Because what had just happened before this? Samuel had come. They had all walked in front of Samuel. And God said, no, 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 no. Yes, I'll select David as the new king. So Eliab knew that David had been anointed as the king. So he could very well be jealous of him. This would not be surprising. And the last reason is very simple. He was ashamed of the reaction to Goliath. And he didn't want to be embarrassed by David by having David point this out. So he's part of the army that fled Goliath, did not want to fight him. So by asking this question, what was David doing? He was pointing out his lack of faith and courage. He was questioning Eliab's faith and courage in God. No one likes to be looked bad. Especially older brothers do not like to be looked bad by the made to look bad by the youngest brother. It's not the order of things. Oldest brothers are supposed to make the younger brothers look bad. So what did Eliab do? He wanted to send David home immediately. But David said, "What have I done?" Now, was it not just a question? What did I do wrong? I just asked a question. Then he turned away to another and said the same thing. And the people replied with the same words as before. So now we see David's response. David did not want to go back. And he turned to the other people and he asked the same question to the other people who were standing there. David said the same thing, and they replied in the same way. So David stayed in spite of what his older brother Eliab wanted him to do. So we've seen the two armies face off each other. We've seen Goliath come out and prepare for battle to challenge the people. This giant, 9'9", wearing this 125 plus pounds of armor, carrying this spear with a 16-pound spearhead on it. I'd have trouble carrying that all day, let alone using it. And we've seen the Israeli army standing there going, gee, he's a big guy. He's a giant. I don't think I can fight him. You go fight him. No, you go fight him. No, how about you go fight him? So somebody go fight him, just not me. Yeah. And this has been going on for 40 days. And David comes. He sees what's going on. He hears and he says, well, why don't somebody go out and fight him? God's help, you can beat him. Don't you have enough faith in God to do it? Yeah, well, you question somebody, what's their normal reaction? Do they say, well, thank you for questioning me and pointing out my faults? How many of you ever had somebody say that to you? Not very many people, not very often. Usually what's the normal reaction? They get mad at you. I had a boss that was a micromanager. She did not like anybody to question her. I had to work around her a lot of times to get her to finally see things and agree with changes. So this is the situation that we're at now. The armies have formed out. Goliath has come out and challenged them. Israel's have not responded. David has heard this and says, why doesn't somebody go fight them? Stay tuned. We'll continue with the story next week. Justin's going to continue and we'll see the actual battle. So what's the bottom line? Something very simple. The question, do you trust God and do you have enough faith to face the challenges? Do you trust God? Sometimes it's easy to trust God. Sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's not. Well, let's close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, as we conclude this sermon today, if your heart has been touched, Lord, we just pray that you would open it to receive the Lord in your life if you haven't. And we just ask that if you've been touched and you know your need for the Lord, you know that you're not enough. You know you have to embrace what God is offering and take that courageous step forward. It's a very simple step, Lord. All you need to do is make this simple prayer. Lord, I know I'm a sinner. I know I've done wrong. I know I can't do it by myself, Lord. So give me the faith, the wisdom, and the courage, and help me to reach out this morning. Just acknowledge that I'm a sinner. I need to repent and turn away from the sin. And turn to you, Lord, and I turn to you. I acknowledge that your Son came. He took his sins upon himself, took all my sins and put them upon himself. And he was hung on that cross after he was beaten, his body broken. And he bled and died for me and became this perfect sacrifice. His blood was spilled and covered my sins so that I'm sinless before you, God. And all I have to do to accept this great gift is to accept what he's done. And Lord, I do so this morning. I acknowledge my sin. I know that I need God. And I accept, Jesus, what you've done in my life. And Lord, let me tell somebody about this today. And let me just accept what your great gift and turn to you, Lord. So help me, God. I ask this through Jesus Christ. Congratulations. If you just prayed that prayer, you have an eternity in heaven. From that instant on, you're God's child. You are an heir. And you have eternity. Don't just keep it to yourselves. Reach out and tell somebody. Reach out to one of us. We'll help you. We have a guide that we can give you. We have a Bible that we can help to share with you. And we'll be happy to stand alongside you and help you in your growth. And so we're just so blessed to be able to come together this morning, this Memorial Day. We're so thankful for all those who have given their lives for us. We just ask as we go out, spend the rest of this weekend, that we would remember those. We would thank them. And we just simply thank everything that we do through Jesus Christ. Amen. Today. That's someone that we want to present to you, and they will be presented to the church for your vote in the coming weeks. And it'll be a day of teaching and voting, and we'll give that to you in the next couple of weeks, and that's going to happen. So don't think that things aren't happening behind the scenes, that they are. Thank you, Dan. And let's close with our final song.